Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening, wherever you may be, however you may be listening, as I anxiously try to write the Facebook post for this thing at the moment. It's the gruesome twosome today. Dominic, our good buddy Dominic, got stuck at work today, unfortunately, so we wish him well. He wasn't lying about it, saying it was the busy season. I know you guys pretty much do the same jobs at different places, but or you're more administration, aren't you? Yeah, so you tell people like Dom what to do. You tell people like Dom to stay late. You work in the same field, though. Shows you how much I know about things that aren't radio. But at any rate, you just got the two of us today talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and we are talking about, it's like really an all-animated show. If only the second story was at least as positive as the first movie. Disney's layoffs, recent round of layoffs, some big names in these layoffs, too. It's the fallout from Buzz, from the Lightyear movie from about a year ago. So we're going to be touching on that as well. So decent amount of stuff, decent amount of media stories to get into today. We were talking about before the show, we were talking about just anybody who lives in New York. If any viewers live in New York, man, hearts are with you. That sucks. Like it doesn't look as, and again, who am I to say, because it's on the opposite coast of where I live, but it doesn't look as bad. Remember like 2 years ago, it was during COVID, I think. It was actually during early pandemic. Remember when California and Seattle, all the photos coming out from there from the fires were like red? It was like everything was like blood red, where this is like this burnt orange haze. I told Joe the first time I saw it, it looks just like Blade Runner 2049. The White Sox and Yankees game, the Sox playing in New York tonight, that game just got postponed. And I was telling Joe that this morning during the radio news brief on my morning show today, I said it made no sense to me whatsoever, and I'm still trying to figure this out. They said yesterday that New York, for the first time in its history, was number one in the worst air quality survey of the world. It was number one. And number two was New Delhi. Now New Delhi's number one today, and New York is number two. And I told Joe, I said, it doesn't make any sense to me. How the hell, the fires are in Nova Scotia, Canada. I said, how the hell is the area where the fires are at not number one on the air quality list, not even number two, but the place that's getting like the spillover smoke effect from the fire is number. That don't make any sense to me. I've parroted that fact to like 7, 8 other people today in hopes of somebody trying to explain it. The only rationale I've been able to come to is that the air quality survey is a Canadian thing, and they just look to blame the U.S. in any way they can. It's really not a laughing matter, but I just thought that was funny. But as I checked yesterday, actually, I don't know what it is today. Who knows? Maybe about the same, maybe a little bit more. 6.9 million acres have burned with these wildfires. That's like an unfathomable amount of acreage. And like, I'm not going to lie, like, we don't live really in an area where this is a concern, but now having a girlfriend who's a firefighter, I take like, my ears perk up every time I hear like house fire or building fire or wildfire. My ears perk up now, and I like tend to listen to it more, out of just like concern. And now that it's like just part of my world now. But at any rate, other than that, Miss Lincoln, how's the play? How are you doing, Joe? Oh, Jesus. Jesus. That's rough, man. Like I said, every time I talk to you, I'm just grateful I'm not in school anymore. I don't blame you. That's rough, man. And this is the time of the year it sucks because to have that situation because this is when I know a ton of people at my place were off recently for vacations. I'm going on vacation here in 2 weeks. This is the time of the year. No, I understand that. And it always sucks. I understand a lot of people, especially in radio, you see it a lot. I can't speak for other jobs, but I would assume it's pretty much the same. A lot of people like to take off during I always say those awkward days between Christmas and New Year's into the new year. People like to take those off. And I understand if you have kids and everything, you're running around for the holidays, undoubtedly. Selfishly speaking, as somebody who doesn't have kids, I never wanted to take those days off because I'm like, it's too goddamn cold to go anywhere. It's too cold. Even if you wanted to fly somewhere, you're really chancing it with what the weather is going to be like. And I'm like, it's kind of nice. There's not a lot to do at work those days to either. No business gets done on those days, so it's not like I'm stressed. Where it's a lot. It's I always wondered how people live in Miami because it's man, if I was if in February, if I'm working in an office job and at 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm staring at aqua water, I would not get any work done. Oh, of course.
Just realized I was muted this whole time. Thank you, Catherine. Oh my God.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm doing good. School's gonna be rough if you couldn't pick up with what Steve was saying there. But
Thank you, Catherine.
The thing I wanted to bring up was, dude, I went to Texas last November. And I was like, finally, I'm gonna spend a birthday. My birthday's in November. I'm gonna spend one of my birthdays not with cold ass weather. And it's Chicago wanted to give me one last middle finger before I left because a winter blizzard came out of nowhere, a mini blizzard is what the pilot called it, for about 10 minutes, and it froze the wings, and we had to go and get the wings defrosted by spraying this chemical on there and everything. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, dude.
Was that last year?
That was last year, yeah.
Because I remember it was unseasonably warm for Thanksgiving. I remember I went to my coworker's Thanks/Friendsgiving. I went to it in a hoodie.
Yeah.
Which was unkind. I remember it was warmer out
and
here.
It wasn't cold in Chicago, but this blizzard just was we're just gonna show up right now.
That's so inconvenient. It makes me worried too because I'm planning on flying. We're going down to New Orleans in November. Yeah. I'm planning on flying, and I haven't flown in 20 years. I haven't flown. I have no clue what to expect. So we're going down to New Orleans for the Bear game, actually.
Okay.
And I'm already worried. My buddy's you got to get my friend I'm going with, my buddy's we were talking on the phone and he's like, Jesus, dude, you got to get some Viking in or something. You're already worried and you're not even, we haven't even booked anything yet.
Dude, in all honesty, get one of those neck pillows. Those always help. Just sleep. Honestly, that's my best advice. If you're not comfortable with flying, get those neck pillows, deal with the takeoff, and just sleep the rest of the way.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm going to be if you ever seen Beavis and Butthead Do America, I'm going to be Beavis on takeoff. I swear to God, man. Going through the old lady's purse and taking pills.
That's funny.
Here's my question, and then we'll actually start the show here. Here's my question in your experience, because you obviously have flown quite a bit in your life. Is it better? I think we're going to get screwed either way because it's with the NFL. They're going to gouge the Chicago Flyers no matter what because of the fact that you're dealing with football that week and the Bears are in New Orleans. You know what I mean? So I think they're going to gouge Chicago flights anyway. But is it better in your experience to book early or book later?
It doesn't matter. It can change.
It doesn't matter.
It's the nature of the beast when it comes to flying. It can change at any point. Now, I will say, the earlier, the more selection you have. That doesn't mean price flights won't change. That's very possible. But the earlier you look, the more selection you will have before a flight gets fully booked and then just never to be returned or canceled. A person's seat. So my best advice is you said the game's when?
November 5th.
November 5th. I would start looking around next month, honestly.
We started looking now. We were thinking about having it booked by the 1st of July.
It's not a bad idea.
But I hear conflicting things. I think we're gonna get. I think it's gonna be high no matter what because of the football game. I think it's gonna be high no matter what.
What flight provider are you guys looking at?
My buddy hasn't flown much more than me, but more than me. He's leaning Spirit.
Okay.
I told him, I said, I got my parents used to fly Southwest. I don't know if I want to go that route after that catastrophe.
Now, here's the thing. I fly Southwest. I used to hate Southwest when I was younger. I thought they were absolutely fucking terrible. It wasn't until 2017, one of my friends went, no, we're taking Southwest. And I was like, dude, I've been taking Southwest as a kid. We had a terrible flight experience, and my parents vowed to never take them again. Ever since then, we fly any other flight provider or airline service than Southwest. I took them in 2017. When I personally book my own flight or I go with friends, I have always booked Southwest. I highly recommend them.
And you went in with your knives sharpened, and you still came out impressed.
And I still came out impressed. The deal of allowing to have 2 check-in bags for free with your ticket is like worth it alone. But just also the amount of deals that they provide if you're looking for like destinations and stuff. And they're the only one. They basically own Midway at this point, and Midway, like, it's a bitch to drive to.
It is. Midway's a bitch,
but it is the flight. I was able to do a round trip to New York City with Southwest in September, a very busy month to fly. I was able to get a round trip for $$55 to New York.
Oh God, I'd kill for that now.
Yeah,
I would kill for that
now.
Was I also
2021.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, because that was like the piss off though during COVID. It was like, yeah, flights are cheap. Too bad it was like gas. Too bad you can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Too bad you can't do anything. Yeah, so we're looking at that though. A lot of connecting flights too, which I don't want to have to deal with.
That is the issue with Spirit.
What I was gonna say, there's a shitload of. Is it a Spirit thing?
Spirit is heavily known for it. I don't like Spirit. I mean, you guys do you and everything. Southwest does have connecting flights, but it's not as much. Let me say this: all airlines do it. There's not an airline that.
No, I know that. I remember though looking when my parents used to go to Vegas in like high school because I'd have to help them and stuff, or my father'd want to look at airlines and stuff. Like it was majority direct flights, and it was like now it seems like there's an abundance of connecting flights. And man, you're really playing roulette with the connecting flights. So, you really are.
With connecting flights, the reason why there's so many now is because there's also a lack of pilots for certain airlines, Spirit being one of them. Yes. And it also costs the airline less to pay the staff because they're not doing such a long flight. You know, if you're going from Illinois to Colorado compared to Illinois straight to California or something, it's not as much.
Yeah, it's ridiculous though. Like, cause we're just going to New Orleans, which I think is just under a 3-hour flight, and it's like fucking like I can understand if it was to California.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or obviously across the country.
Yeah.
Or across the world rather. Excuse me. But like, man, from like fucking Chicago to New Orleans though, like there's really after 80 minutes we gotta land again, and then I gotta go through takeoff again.
Yeah.
Like,
I would recommend looking at Southwest honestly with you, and if you want I can even take a look for you and send you like information. I don't mind doing it. I do it all the time for my friends. And I always throw this suggestion no matter what. I mean, have you considered driving? Because sometimes, you know what, driving is the better option if you really.
I haven't considered it. I think it's like 13 hours or something.
It might be the better option. It might honestly, like, depending on how much you pay for a flight or just like, you know, if you just don't want to deal with it, it might be well worth.
I'd get a rental car. Honestly, that. You know, put the miles in something else. Yeah. Anyway, we went on way too long on that. Flights with Steve over here. Appreciate you, Joe. Appreciate you. We are going to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse finally after we lost all our viewers except for Catherine. Love you. After everybody evaded, they're like, what is this, a travel show? We'll talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. We'll travel across the multiverses and whatnot in the Spider-Verse for this movie here. First things first, we're not going to really talk box office here, but I do want to bring this up. The first movie opened with $35 million, which looking back on it seems very, very low.
Yeah.
for an animated movie and a superhero movie seems extremely low. I almost had to I had to fact check that when somebody tweeted that it only opened at $35 million. This sequel opened at 120. This is just in America, FYI. Yeah. The sequel opened at 120 million. Now, normally sequels do less than the original. That's got to be a record for a sequel. It's got to be.
I don't know any sequel that's made that much of a profit compared to the first film.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. So I made the joke on the radio show the other day that we're going to be going beyond the Spider-Verse. We're going to be going behind it, underneath it, zigzagging across it now. I said there are going to be so many sequels now. This thing's going to get rebooted.
This next one, which, they've said that will be the last one. I doubt that at this point. They'll probably do at least 2 more.
They're already talking about a live action one, which I'm not. With a Miles Morales live action one, and I'm like, no.
This is the only way it would be cool. It's just in my taste, because the one thing, of course, missing in these movies is a young Miles and young Peter Parker bonding, which you get in the new video games that are coming out. But I would love to see that, of course, with like Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and whoever they select. Sure. But in my opinion, I think this is perfect as is.
I do too. And man, what a movie to see on the big screen too. Yeah. Again, this is, for people who might be confused, this is the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, which came out in 2018. This is a divorced timeline from any of the previous Spider-Man movies.
Yes.
This is really standalone. This is based off of the Miles Morales comic books. I feel like a lot of people don't realize that he's a legit. I think a lot of people think that he was just created out of thin air.
A lot of people think that still, which is sad. But also, I'm glad you clarified that, because I had to clarify that this is not a sequel to No Way Home at least 3 times to people, which I don't know how you think that.
Well, it only made 35 million opening weekend, the original movie. So I guess, maybe that's your answer here. But this is the byproduct. It was written by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who I think right now, I've always considered them some of the best animators and visualists in the game, and visionaries, really. They might honestly, at least as far as American cinema goes, they might be the best, because this thing is cool. This thing is a wonderful spectacle on the big screen. Directed by Joaquim dos Santos, Kemp Powers and Justin K. Thompson. Kemp Powers, probably the most noteworthy name of that lot. Kemp Powers did Soul. He also did the screenplay for One Night in Miami. Yep. I knew his name was familiar when it came across the screen.
Yeah, well, remember when we were talking about both those movies? Actually, it was One Night in Miami. When we were talking about the movie, we said like he's been hired to direct Spider-Verse, and we said that's perfect.
That's a fascinating choice here. There's been a lot of hyperbole with this thing. I'm going to let you take the reins here in a minute, because I know how much Spider-Man means to you. But I want to make this point here. And like, there's been a lot of hyperbole with this thing. I think it's got a chance to be the highest rated movie on Letterboxd in Letterboxd's history.
Yeah.
Right now, that is Parasite with 4.6 out of 5 stars. It's going to take Across the Spider-Verse a while to catch up, but I think it's doable. I think it's at a 4.7 last I checked.
Yeah.
But I'd argue that some of the initial praise for it has been a little bit hyperbole, but I'm going to offer my own here. I think this series, when all's said and done and Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out next March, I think when all's said and done, this trilogy has the potential to do for animation what Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings did for fantasy epics.
That is a really good idea. I forgot what you were just saying there in terms of like comparing it, but I think that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. I think it's a lofty statement, but I honestly think that it has that potential. I think after Peter Jackson finished making Lord of the Rings, it felt like the stakes and expectations for fantasy filmmaking had been raised.
Yeah.
Where this movie, which is, fun fact too, the longest animated film to be produced in America at 140 minutes.
Yeah.
It is the longest animated film, and I think it ranks in the top 20 of longest.
Yeah.
It's about half the length of the longest, which is, I want to say, a Canadian production, but it does some amazing first time things for animation in its layering. It looks, did they use rotoscoping with this, at least in some way?
Bro, they had to. There's no way.
They had to. I feel like they did everything. I feel like they've used motion capture, rotoscoping, hand-drawn CGI. I feel like there's no easy way to classify this thing, but it is. I mean, it looks even better than Into the Spider-Verse, and Into the Spider-Verse was ahead of its time.
The poster I'm showing currently on screen right now, it doesn't even do the justice that the amount of animation styles that are in this movie. You see some of it with like this character right here and Spider-Punk back here, and even Miguel O'Hara here, who's kind of like they're defined a little bit better with like some of their artistic styles compared to somebody like Miles, who looks very more graphic novelish. This guy's obviously from the animated cartoon, stuff like that. So, dude, I wouldn't be surprised if, yeah, like it's in some ways they did like everything possible, or will do it in the next film.
The film picks up, though, on the story of Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy, too. It gives you a little bit of a... Excuse me. Gives you a little bit of a prologue in the very beginning of the movie. They reunite with a couple familiar characters from the first one, like Peter B. Parker.
Yeah.
Voiced by Jake Johnson. You also have some different conflicts with Miles' parents and Gwen's parents, too, throughout the whole thing. But really, it comes down to the main villain of this thing, who actually, I like how they did the villain. It's one of the many things I liked about this movie, The Spot. He looks like a complete moron.
Yeah.
And it looks like you could defeat this guy in a short film from the first time you're introduced to him.
Yeah.
He's such a buffoon. But then you realize, like, as the movie goes on, you're like, man, this guy's actually seriously dangerous.
Yep.
And then you get introduced to a lot of spider people throughout the whole thing. And the thing that I think, I mean, people don't even think Miles Morales is they think he's a character made up for these movies. So I don't think people are going to realize that the spider people that are in this movie are all from comics. Yeah. They're all from pre-existing comics.
There's like filler Spider-Man like in the background.
Sure, that don't have any lines.
Anybody that like gets like camera in their face, they're real.
Yeah, they're authentic based off comics and stuff. They're Spider-Woman voiced by Issa Rae. Yep. You got
Indian Spider-Man.
Punk Rock Spidey, who's voiced by Daniel Kaluuya. Mm-hmm. Probably my favorite is the Indian Spider-Man of Mumbattan. That guy's cool, man.
I loved him.
His introduction was great. There's a woman. There's like probably my favorite that I just like wound up researching was a Spider Bitch. Who I didn't even realize was an actual character.
Yeah.
But I researched her. Like, there's just so much. And if it sounds like I'm going all over the place with talking about how this movie is and what it does, this movie is kind of all over the place. The journey it takes you over the course of 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Joe, what say you, the bigger Spider-Man fan of the house over here? What was your reaction across the Spider-Verse? I would have loved to watch you watch this thing.
I'm sure you would have. Believe it or not, like I was. It's funny, the audience I saw this with, there's a cameo near the beginning of this movie that involves the Venom movies. I won't say what it is, and some people lost their mind. I'm just kind of like, whatever. But then the spider buggy shows up and I lost it. That's the kind of like, because I owned that toy as a kid and everything. I mean, we've talked about with No Way Home, we talked about it with a lot of stuff. I got this dude on my crock. Like, I mean, like, this guy, like, it's the hero I grew up with. It's the hero that I've resonated with a lot of problems I've grown up with. I relate it back to Peter Parker, and that's always been something great about Peter as a character, and that is he is a very relatable guy. He is late on rent. He works a 9-to-5 job at the Daily Bugle. Like, he doesn't get paid much either. But he loves being Spider-Man. He loves helping people, and that's something that's resonated with me throughout my life. Is I love to help people. I'm a very caring person and everything.
Yes,
the things I've loved about these movies though is because I've always believed anybody could be Spider-Man, and that has been the identity of Spider-Verse, because literally it's the Spider-Verse. It's a universe full of characters. So that first movie, to me, it's my favorite Spider-Man movie. Because I think it captures the idea of what it means to be Spider-Man. The responsibility is everything. Not that none of the other films did that. Like, I think Homecoming does that in a great way, of a coming-age way, in a comedy sense. Spider-Verse, of course, while it has comedy, it does in a way that like actually like shows growth with Miles, to where when he does his first like real swing to What's Up, Danger, I got goosebumps in the theater. That movie, to me, is near perfect. I love that movie to death. So I was very excited for this movie. And it sucks to say that I'm not in love with it as much as everybody else is. but I did like it. I do want to reassure that before like anybody comes at me, because I've been hiding my my Letterboxd review because I just kind of felt like, oh man, if I put this out there, people are gonna come at me.
Just wait. When this thing gets a Best Picture nomination,
yeah,
people
then
will
it's gonna
turn
be
on it.
it's gonna be the Everything Everywhere All at Once then.
You watch.
Because so I like this movie a ton. It's a great sequel, but to me it does have some problems that I kind of expected going in after seeing stuff like Dune and other Part 1 movies, because that is something that I don't think they made clear with this movie, despite the fact it was originally called Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. They removed the Part 1 of that title. However, this is still a half story here. The thing I liked about that first Spider-Verse movie is that it felt like a complete thing. It felt like Miles earned becoming Spider-Man. It's, you know, Miles, like Peter Parker and Miles, by the way, two of my favorite Spider-Man. Like, I love Miles to death ever since he was created as a character. Peter, of course, is my favorite because it's what I grew up with. But Miles, in terms of like new Spider-Man they've introduced, and he was very recent, where he was introduced, I think, in 2013, 2014. I loved him to death, and I thought Spider-Verse was a great first film outing for the character with such a unique style. Like, rather than doing it live action, make it animated and do something unique with it. This movie, to me, like, what was just kind of disappointing for me is that this is Miles's movie, but his storyline doesn't really get started until about halfway through the movie. It is a lot. The first half of this movie is a lot of character building and a lot of like just kind of setting the tone and stakes of everything with Miles's family and where they're at, where Miles is at in terms of being Spider-Man for Brooklyn. The first 15 minutes of this movie actually is about Gwen, and I would say this movie is more about Gwen, and she actually has an arc in this movie than Miles does. And that's not, I'm not saying that's a critique, because I get it, this is part one of a story, and like that was the same thing with Dune that I brought up, is that it's part one of a story, and you don't really feel like Atreides, Timothy Chalamet's character, doesn't really feel complete by the end of that film. However, some other characters kind of do, and I kind of had the same feeling walking out of this movie, where I was like, I like that a lot, especially visually.
Mm-hmm.
But story-wise, it's not as lacking as Dune, because as much as I did like the Dune film, as somebody who did read the book and everything, I did kind of walk out of that film going, man, we barely scratched the surface of what the fuck this book is about. Here, you do tackle a lot of stuff. There is stuff that, like, you know, is talked about and everything. They're setting a lot of stakes and everything. And like I said, I mean, like me and Steve were talking about Spot earlier. Spot is introduced, and he's a great villain. That's kind of setting the stakes here for both parts of these films. Miguel O'Hara is another antagonist who I think does a great job, who's performed by Oscar Isaac, who did wonderful in this role as well. That's just a whole nother layer that like Miles has to deal with. This movie sets up a lot of stuff that Miles has to deal with, but by the end of it, he does deal with it in some way, like with at least the Spider Society, but it's not like they're done with him just yet. Like, he does in some sort of way. Like, if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna spoil it, but he does outwit them, outsmart them. But it's like, it's not over yet with the Spider Society and everything. I forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry. It just doesn't feel like a complete story with Miles, and that sucks. And that's what I went into this movie thinking it would be. By the end of it, we would have something there, but we don't. And I don't want to. That is like my biggest criticism with this movie. I think everything else this movie does, though, it does amazingly well.
Yeah, yours is going to be a moot point in 8 months. Like, that's the tough part about middle chapters. It's like, I'm sure people said the same thing about The Two Towers when it came out. I know
Probably.
Ebert did. I remember reading Ebert's review. Like, because, you know, it's middle chapter syndrome. You're stuck between a movie that, like, its beginning is a prologue and then its ending is a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I fully was ready. I forgot this thing was once called Part 1. I really did. But about maybe, like, with an hour left in it, I was like, I got a feeling this is going to be a cliffhanger. And then with about 20 minutes left, it was like you just knew this wasn't going to get wrapped up.
Yeah, with how long we were spending time in Brooklyn alone, like, and just really with Miles's family, I was like, this has been going on for a really long time. It's taken a while to at least get to the first universe where it goes to Mumbai, where Indian Spider-Man's introduced. I was just like, man. I thought to myself, like, that's right, this is a part one story, and I'm like, none of this is gonna get wrapped up, is it? And it's just like, it introduced so much cool stuff, And it's like,
no, and that's the difficult part.
yeah,
That's the
it. I hope I'm not losing connection here. I'm gonna keep talking. Oh, Steve, hello, Steve.
I can hear you. You're not moving on my screen. You want to take our Zoom sponsored intermission?
Yeah, it's like our Zoom sponsored intermission. We'll be right back.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh boy.
Ah, crap.
We'll be right back after our Zoom sponsored intermission. Keep it right here on Sleepless with Steve.
Take two on Sleepless with Steve, back from our Zoom-sponsored intermission, our lag-sponsored intermission as well. That's the fun part about doing a live internet show like this. And we only got 2 people today. You really think it wouldn't be that big of a problem, you know?
Yeah.
But at any rate, we were talking about how Across the Spider-Verse can have a little bit of that middle chapter syndrome.
Yes.
That sometimes second parts do. I was talking about how, like, Two Towers, I know that some of the reviews of that movie, you know, gave it its middle chapter, middle parts syndrome. You know, it's going to be a moot point in 9 months when Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out, and then you can watch these movies chronologically or 2 and 3 back to back. But that's not my chief complaint. I didn't mind that because I expected it sooner or later watching the thing. So that's not one of my chief complaints with it. But I understand too, especially with how immersed you get in this. And now in the moment, you're going to have to wait 9 months.
Yeah. It just felt unbalanced at points too, where it was just like, man, we were really spending a lot of time here. That I just kind of felt like we could have got to this stuff a little bit sooner and probably ended it at a more satisfying point where I feel like, because there is like these middle chapters of trilogies like that I do feel like, and I get it, this is technically one film that's split into 2 parts. I've been told that several times this weekend when I bring my criticism to people. I get that. But like, I've watched part 1, like Deathly Hallows part 1 to me of Harry Potter from beginning to end. I feel like they've found a better like way to be like, and that's we're gonna bookmark it, and it still felt like, hey, that felt complete. This kind of felt like fucking Mockingjay Part 1 and Dune, where it was just like, wow, like, you know, this is where we're gonna end things. Like, things just finally started getting interesting, and we're just gonna wrap it up here. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and it ends on a. Here's the thing, though. It does end in a way that already. I mean, if you weren't already, I can't wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse. Yeah. Like, they ended it on a cruel cliffhanger.
They did. They had an Empire Strikes Back like type of cliffhanger. And let me clarify when I said like you know, like it is like satisfying the whole way through this movie. Don't get me wrong. I know I compare it to Mockingjay, which I know a lot of people hate and whatnot, but like, you know, it's like, I did like think like, okay, I was still satisfied. It's just like, damn, like, you know, I really wish you found a better way to like, you know, kind of wrap some of this stuff up to at least me feel like some conclusion to some of these storylines happens in this movie. That's why I said like it's more of Gwen's film, because Gwen's the only one that really kind of just wraps up her plot line.
Yeah, and she's the narrator in the beginning,
and that's
so it kind of clues you. It kind of clues you into that. I mean, like I said, it's no spoilers, but for a cliffhanger where nobody dies or appears dead, I mean, it's cruel. Like, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
It's hard to find an endpoint to a story that feels super impactful and leaves you wanting more. Like, I go back, one of my favorite cliffhangers in the last few years, ironically, was another Spider-Man movie, was Far From Home. Far From Home was a cruel cliffhanger, man. I think my jaw did hit the floor.
That was a good one.
With that one, because that one was like, I mean, it was I liked Far From Home, I think, more than a lot of people, but like that ending though, it was just like that already. It's like if the expectations weren't high for No Way Home, they're high now, and it's the same with Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
with the way they leave this off. But the star of this movie is obviously the visuals. I mean, and pick whatever adjective you want. I think in my review I used kaleidoscopic, which is a fun one I don't get to pull out very often. Psychedelic, vibrant, and more realized. Like it's one of the most well executed animated movies in history, and for one of the big reasons is because of the fact that it doesn't like. You get the sense that the animators and the filmmakers do not feel confined at all in a visual sense by the barriers of the screen. They make use of every inch and pixel of this thing, even when characters are like standing still, like that conversation between Gwen and her father in her bedroom. There's so much going on here visually that like it's really it's one of the reasons why NY Times made every frame a painting. This film qualifies.
Yeah, honestly, that is actually pretty good to bring up as well, because this film does qualify. It's also just, another reminder, like, to, I know people and friends of mine that were like, why doesn't Sony just sell all of Spider-Man like properties to Disney? Why doesn't this happen? Why doesn't Disney just own everything? This is kind of why it's good that Disney doesn't necessarily own everything, Marvel, because we would never get this with Disney. We would never get something to this level. They would try to just pass it off to Pixar, or just they wouldn't even do. They wouldn't probably do an animated film. They would just think, oh, it's Spider-Man, we have to make a live action. Because this movie takes full advantage of the animation with its storyline being that it's like a multiverse thing. I know everybody was like, oh man, Everything Everywhere All at Once was like a real multiverse movie, and yeah, sure it was. But this gets even crazier with it, man. This stuff brings up like cartoon logic with characters where it's just like, oh yeah, they like. There's the opening of this film where they fight a vulture from the Renaissance period. They even have like a little like block in the corner telling you like, oh yeah, cartoon space, which is basically they can pull items out of their ass, basically. Like, because he's from a universe where stuff is just sketched in at like random and whatnot. I'm like, that is so sick. Like, you're actually using the animation as like another form of like, universe storytelling and everything. That's so cool.
You know how good this movie is? It makes you forget that it's from the same animated studio that gave you Open Season and Surf's Up.
Yeah.
That's how good this is.
Yeah.
Like, Sony, people forget Sony Pictures, I would argue, before this thing, did not really have any serious, like, movies that made money, but no artistic properties worth really remembering. I think their best franchise was probably Goosebumps, and that wasn't even animated. Parts of it were, but it wasn't an animated movie. But they had Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs. They had the Angry Birds movie. They had Hotel Transylvania. They had the Smurfs. Shout out my boy Roger Gosnell. But they didn't have like really, they didn't have a repertoire that made you think that they were capable of something like this. And that shows you the value of Phil Lord and Chris Miller. I don't mean to project or assume, and I haven't read any reviews. I just see the kind of concerningly low Rotten Tomatoes score. There's a good chance. There's a good chance that Elemental, there's a good chance that this Pixar movie, flounders in the face of this thing.
Is it getting bad reviews?
Yeah, it's getting mediocre reviews.
Man, so we
saw... It was at like a 58 last I checked.
I saw a trailer for it when I saw this movie. And like, I was just sitting there. I'm like, for a Pixar movie, that looks actually bad. Like, it doesn't look like
it doesn't look good.
Like,
it doesn't look good.
This
a lot of people
like a Lightyear scenario where I'm like, okay, like that might be good, that might be bad, or like it might be it's bad in terms of Pixar movies, but like better than most animated movies. No, I just looked at it, I'm like, no, it just straight up looks bad.
No, I thought the same thing. I'm like, this does not impress me at all. There's no hype for it. There's no hype whatsoever for it, And then the other thing too, I've had to correct like two or three people that I've brought it up to when they ask me like, what are you looking forward to, or what's coming out this summer? I think a lot of people are under the false assumption that it's a sequel to Inside Out. I think a lot of people are under the false assumption. I've already ran into like 2 or 3 people that do, and it's the similar concept of like personifying something. Like this is personifying elements like fire, water, air.
Yeah.
Like I can see it, but I'm like, no, Inside Out's getting its own sequel.
That's just been Pixar's thing. It's just like, what if this had feelings? I mean, like, that's been like the meme and everything.
I'm like, the horror genre personifies grief and everything nowadays. Like, have you seen the Boogeyman? Like, why not Pixar? But anyway, we're not here to discuss that. But I was just saying though that like, I think I honestly, like, speaking externally to this, I think this could be the first animated movie since Toy Story 3 to get a Best Picture nomination. I think it's that impressive. I think honestly, it's that wall-to-wall impressive.
It should, honestly. I think, especially with how you want to rebound from the Academy for the animators, allow this for Best Picture. That would rebound it. Because the amount of work that had to go into this for years, they had to delay it a whole year because of animation. And you see the final product. That would be a rebound where it would be like, okay, the Academy is finally recognizing that animation is film. It's not a genre, it's film.
And what about it'll be 10 years? It'll be 10 years effective next year. So when the time the Oscar nominations come out, that would almost be an acceptable apology for somehow, some way fucking over the Lego movie.
Yeah. By the way, I know I'm talking with a lower voice. It's because I'm just really exhausted, but very happy to talk about this movie.
No worries, man. Now my main criticism with this is a criticism I fully expected to have with this thing, and like. And it's something now that anytime Lord and Miller are involved in an animated movie,
I know
you almost
have
to. The word busy doesn't even begin to describe this thing. It's like exhaustive. I've been telling people it really caters to the attention spans of Gen Z. It really does.
I guess so, yeah.
This thing is frenetic as hell. It drowns you in chaos and mayhem. It would be long and exhaustive for an hour and 40-minute movie, but it's 40 minutes longer than that. Mm-hmm. This thing doesn't to its credit, it slows down at a few points.
It does.
It does slow down, and it doesn't just slow down to be quiet. It slows down, and the moments it slows down at, it's usually conversations between Gwen and her father or Miles and his parents. It slows down for good reason, and it really achieves its emotional beats.
It even slows down in just the terms of the speed this movie has set. There's just a scene where Miles is swinging back home, and it's just recapping the scenarios of this movie. And it's like, I kind of needed this. Like, just a moment of just him swinging and just recapping everything I saw. Which, by the way, I do want to say, I did see this movie twice. I saw it again yesterday.
Oh, wow, did you?
I saw it online.
Nice.
Somebody uploaded it onto Twitter, the whole thing, and I'm just like, well, don't mind if I do.
Good quality, or was it a camera?
It was good quality somehow. I don't know how, but it was good quality.
It can't still be up. It can't still be up.
I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch it again. I'm not going to lie. The second time I rewatched it, I digested a lot more because I knew what was going to happen. And I was like, okay, maybe, like, I get it. Phil Lord, Chris Miller, you guys throw everything at the board when it comes to your dialogue. You guys literally fire on all cylinders. Upon second viewing, I will say, I had that same issue. After watching it again, though, I was like, okay, I kind of actually took everything in a bit better now that I knew how things were going to play out.
I was kind of mad at myself that I wanted to. It was on my schedule, but I didn't get to it. I wanted to rewatch Into the Spider-Verse before this. But before Beyond the Spider-Verse, I'm going to rewatch both. I'm going to watch both of them, too, in the days before. Because, like, I feel that is absolutely the case, that on second viewing, like, you're able to digest more because you're not absorbing it for the first time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even in the beginning, there's, like, I'm trying to remember what exactly they were. There's little text pop-ups it happens mostly in the beginning, where there's little text pop-ups that like contextualize a term or a character or something. Even those pop up too quickly as soon as like you notice them, they're gone. It's like, did you intend for me to read that?
The reason why I knew what the cartoon one was, because again, I had it on my phone. I said pause. Oh, that's what that said.
But I mean, I don't know. Like they went too fast for the point that it was like, did you even intend for me to read that?
After actually pausing and reading all of them, they're basically all just little like sight gag jokes. Like, because the Scooby-Doo one that Spider-Punk says is like, Scooby-Doo is like, you know, slang in like British for "and got a clue." Like,
yeah. Yeah, I wasn't assuming that they would hold the secrets to the movie, but I
Yeah.
was like, it would be nice
It'd
to
be
like,
nice to actually
like,
read it.
yeah, for Christ's sake. And it's like if you have subtitles on, I worry that they'd block them.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really is impressive. It really is impressive though that this thing is able to slow down and have like these more meditative moments.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that don't feel artificial, despite the real approach to the movie, which is so chaotic at times. The only thing is though is that like I still feel that like because it moves so fast, and again maybe a rewatch will iron this out. There's a lot of real thought into this screenplay. There's a lot of real thought into these characters. It feels a lot like thematically linked to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, which a lot of people consider to be the gold standard of superhero movies, myself included, because it addresses a lot of deeper questions.
I'm glad you're bringing this up because you and I shared a very similar criticism with a movie that everybody loves, which is Infinity War. I know I like it more than you, but I had the same thing where I'm like, this movie is just all gas, no brakes for 2 hours. And it's like, we barely get time to breathe at all. And when we do, it's with Thanos, and that's about it. This movie...
Yeah, and movies bug me when they do that.
This movie, while Steve and I are saying it is all gas, the screenplay is written in a way where the characters still get to talk and actually have their moments. I did say like the first half of this movie is just all taking place basically in Brooklyn. And I think they did that on purpose because it was like, look, even when we get to part 2, like part 2 is probably going to be like a finale to like everything. It's going to be one big climax. Who knows? So it probably is going to be really much slowing down. So I think that's why that first hour of this movie really does take its time on like before we really get started on this adventure. For better or for worse in my case. Like, I just felt like we could have got started on it sooner and everything and whatnot to wrap some things up. But that's, my critique and everything. I think this movie handled that way better. Like, I've seen a lot of comparisons to Infinity War and Endgame because, it's taking the same idea, taking 2-part films and calling them entirely different things. And I think, honestly, this is... And some of my friends give me crap for this, but it's just like, really think about it. It's a better screenplay and story than Infinity War because it at least is talking about stuff.
For sure. It talks about, like, not to go into too much of it, but I think this really is the identity of Miles too, is that like it's really asking you, like, in some ways, why do all heroes have to have similar origins and they all have to stem from trauma or tragedy? Like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, like they all have to have like some sort of underlying sadness. Is the only way to be a hero to have like some irreparably tragic past.
Yeah.
That's what this thing asks. And also too, like the Spider-Man 2, Raimi's, was all about like looking at and examining the agony of being Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons Homecoming did this, but in a little bit more of a comical way, one of the reasons I like Homecoming so much.
Same. I know what you're about to say.
I would probably put it as my second favorite Spider-Man movie.
Same.
One of the reasons I liked Homecoming so much was that when Tom Holland's Peter Parker first gets his powers, he does not know how to use them. He's happy. He doesn't know how to use them, though. That's the thing. He's happy, but he doesn't know how to use them. So he's crashing into shit. He's like a danger to himself and the public versus like Tobey Maguire, who knows immediately like how to shoot the webs and how to use them, which doesn't make any sense.
It's like me giving these car keys to my 10-year-old cousin and saying, have fun. That is what Homecoming is, and that is so refreshing because the things I didn't like about the Andrew films is because they cover the fucking same ground as the Tobey Maguire films. And it's just like, at that point in time, there were so many superhero movies where it's a ton of people being like, oh man, it sucks being a superhero because, it's like, I've lost people, and because I've lost this person. And I'm so glad Homecoming bypasses all of that and just goes, dude, we're here to have fun with Spider-Man, aren't we? And I'm like, yes, we are. Thank God. And that's,
now watch him crash into a window.
Now watch him crash into a window. Watch him just literally have to run through an empty field because there's nothing to swing on.
Yeah, that's another part about the thing too. Like that's why I loved Homecoming so much, was it was like, okay, this is like somewhat realistic, as if this kid actually did get these powers. and like, Tobey Maguire knows how to use the damn things instantly. Yeah. And like, that was like the only, there was a different standard of superhero movies back then, but like, it really, like, I was just happy to see. I didn't know I wanted that, but when I saw it, I was like,
It
this
really
is
felt
part
like,
of what's been missing.
this is a high school kid getting in over its head. Like, it really felt that way,
And that's really the essence of the whole damn series.
Yeah, true. Yeah, as much people come at me and be like, "Oh man, you really like it than the Maguire films?" Yeah, I do, because I like the spirit of it more. I'm sorry, like
because it was three great. I always said the reason I put the Holland trilogy over the Raimi trilogy, even though I technically like, I don't think any of the three movies are as good as Spider-Man 2.
Same.
I don't think that, but I put the Holland trilogy over the Maguire trilogy because of the fact that the Holland trilogy, in my opinion, is three consecutively great movies. The Raimi trilogy is two and one mediocre.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way I can explain it.
And that's honestly why I like Spider-Verse, because it covers that tragic stuff, but I think it does it in like a unique way. The first one, that is, of this movie. And this movie, it does it again too, but I think it does it even a bit better, where it does like kind of like, because I'm sick and tired of hearing about Uncle Ben and all this stuff.
Yeah, same.
And
two guys who grew up with Spider-Man, yeah.
The fact they actually contextualize Uncle Ben and use it as a whole thing for Miles to be like, no, I don't actually have to deal with something like this, guys. Like, this is not something that is like, yeah, I'm gonna do my own thing, is like one of my favorite lines he has in the movie. I think it's like, dude, yeah, because it also just sets Miles apart, that he is his own Spider-Man, and like that's the whole identity of these movies. And I really wish they were kind of hitting home with it a bit more in this movie, is that each Spider-Man is unique and everything. And for like Miguel to be like, no, we're part of society, we all follow these rules, we all have to follow these beats. It's like he's like the anti of what that first film's message is. And I'm saying that in a good way, like that he's a great villain for that reason. And Miles is a great protagonist to go against him like that, because he proved that throughout that first film that he is Spider-Man, and he does it again here.
For sure. Working our way to closing thoughts here too. No, I was genuinely impressed by this thing. I think this is going to be a movie that's going to be studied by animators for years to come. I think this is a movie that is going to, I think, prove itself to stand the test of time.
Just to mix styles as much as they did, like, it's going to be studied by animators.
For sure. I wonder, like, and it's not that it's for naught, but like I almost feel like the visual, if there is a complaint about the visuals, it's not that they're busy, it's that the fact that like this movie is so visually impressive that I think there's going to be less discussion warranted around the themes that we just did, and more about how great this thing looks. But that's a critic nitpick of mine. Just a critic nitpick of mine, because at the end of the day, people are still discussing something that's great, which is the visuals of this thing.
Exactly.
And I circumvent back to my original point that I do think that this can make the case, that this makes the case to do for animation what Peter Jackson did for fantasy filmmaking.
Agree.
And that's really raised the stakes in such an incredible fashion. It's going to seem low, but I give it 3 out of 4 stars. I was totally impressed by this thing, and I will revisit it again. I know you will too, for a third time, hopefully on a TV screen. Hopefully on a TV screen for the third time. But I will revisit this in time for the.
Honestly, if they do one of those marathon things where they'll play all 3 movies on the screen, I might go do that, honestly, because that's more doable to me than like a Star Wars marathon in theaters. Like, it's like, okay, these 3 films, I can definitely sit one day in a movie theater and watch it all.
Sure. It's 3 out of 4 for me. What say you for closing thoughts to send us home on Spider-Man?
For me, so like I said, that first film is a near perfect film for me. I love it a lot. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite superhero movies, and it's my favorite Spider-Man movie. So obviously, I wasn't going into this movie expecting the same thing. I was hoping to get the same thing. That would have been awesome, but I didn't go in being like, it better be the same exact thing. And so what I got was really damn good. I loved it visually, and just it blew my mind with some of the styles that it brought in. Spider-Punk, which I meant to bring up earlier, just the idea of it being like a Sex Pistols like album cover of just constant like newspaper clippings coming onto a character all at the same time and everything. That's such a cool idea for a punk type character. It's really insane. It's funny. It moves at a breakneck speed, for better or for worse, in me and Steve's case. And I really wish it at least wrapped up some storylines here and not leave so much open for part 2. But those are like, while those are criticisms, everything I say like positive about this movie is like at like a 4-star level of positive. I really am looking forward to the next film, And maybe as one whole film, this will be maybe 4 stars for me, like the first one is. But I have to agree with Steve on this one. While it seems low, this is the most enthusiastic 3 out of 4 stars I will ever probably give in this show.
Very well said. We'll be back here same time, same place for Beyond the Spider-Verse next year. Like I said, I hope Dom will join us then. I hope Dom will get some time off by then.
Yeah, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. I wish we could end on a more uplifting note, but we do want to talk about this. You sent this, actually. You put this on my radar before I even saw it myself.
Yeah, I read this whole thing, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me.
I found a different article than that one. I found a different article than the one you can bring up in a minute, but it touches on the same thing. Yours gets a bit more nominal into the numbers and everything like that. But Disney and Pixar faced its first round of layoffs in over 10 years. And if you think back, I was trying to think like 10 years ago, what did they do? And it was shortly before A Good Dinosaur. It was shortly before that. It was like, I think it had to be shortly after Inside Out, which is kind of strange to think they went through a round of layoffs after that movie. Because A Good Dinosaur was their first movie that didn't turn a profit.
Yeah.
That was their first movie that didn't turn a profit. And I think Onward didn't either, but that's more because of COVID.
Yeah.
That was because of COVID. And who knows? And then Lightyear was its second. I don't know with this Elemental now. I mean, it's looking a little concerning for Pixar.
It's more looking like, hey man, you might be going back to Disney Plus exclusives now, which is unfortunate.
You know, Elemental also, for the record, stands at a 63 on Rotten Tomatoes at the moment. It is back in the fresh zone.
It's higher than Transformers Rise of the Beast, so you have that going for you.
You know, no, I'm not even touching that one this weekend. I'm not even touching that one. I saw one bit.
You can keep on my letterbox for more information on that.
I already saw a busy movie last weekend. I'm good. But 75 staffers from Pixar were let go last month, technically in May. And again, it was Pixar's. Actually, you know what? I thought Good Dinosaur came out in 2015. No, it was after. The last round of layoffs was due to the Good Dinosaur.
Oh, okay.
So that was the last time it ran through layoffs. There's 2 real big names from these layoffs, even though all are sad. All are quantifiably sad.
Yeah.
The one is Angus McLean. He directed Lightyear. And he was also an animator on Toy Story 4 and Coco. And man, that really sucks. Because I think to like a year ago, that dude was probably forget the fact that I didn't like Lightyear, but that dude had to be over the moon. He's young too. Like he had to be over the moon when Lightyear was like, you know, getting ready and then was released. And then since then, it's really been kind of like a tragic nightmare, you know, for him. And then to get laid off on top of it, I'm convinced he'll bounce back. He's talented, but I worry he's got to be in a dark place, man, because it's one thing like, again, you don't wish layoffs on anybody, but like Galen Sussman is another one. She was a long time employee. She's been there since like 96, I want to say. Galen Sussman is famous for this story. It's popularly memed. If you haven't heard about it, it's she literally saved Toy Story 2. She literally, the only reason that movie exists in the form it does is because of her. Because during the movie's production, during Toy Story 2's production in 98, all the work done up to that point was almost lost due to a deletion command on the film's like internal server assets or something. There was like a deletion command in the coding days that just wiped the whole fucking project. I would have had a stroke if I was the director.
To be the sequel to that movie, too.
But Galen Sussman was on maternity leave, and she backed up the copy on her home PC.
Yeah.
And that's the only way they had it. And it was like, I think like they didn't recover everything, but they recovered like 85% of what was lost because the thing was almost done. The thing was almost done, and she single-handedly saved that. Imagine if she was like probably how I would have been on like if I had to take maternity leave, I'd have been like, fuck that, I ain't working from home. I ain't working from home. I just had a kid. But like, it's one thing if you're Galen Sussman, and also Park Forest, Illinois native Galen Sussman too. You know, it's one thing that like you're older, you're a veteran in the industry and stuff. You've been around, you've weathered storms. For Angus McLean, I was trying to check to see how old he was. I know he's younger. I know he's younger dude. He's not as young as I thought. He's 48.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still, but again, to make your directorial debut in that sense, then to get laid off really, really sucks. There were some other senior members that were let go too. And now you look at this Elemental movie and the kind of middling reviews it's getting. It's got stiff competition from Transformers and Spider-Man.
Hell, Flash is coming out next in 2 weeks.
The Flash is coming out too. That's going to be tough.
Which, by the way, quick side note: Paramount, are you trying to lose money this year between like Among Thieves, the Dungeons and Dragons movie coming out, between two blockbusters, John Wick and I forgot the other one was in March, and now this coming out between Spider-Verse and Flash? What the hell are you doing?
For real. For real. Like they're on fun. It's like the Matthew McConaughey thing in Wolf of Wall Street. Since Paramount just did Top Gun Maverick, they're like, these are fun certificates. That's what they're doing right now after all the money they made on Maverick.
Dead Reckoning, it comes out 2 weeks before Barbie and Oppenheimer. It's like, dude.
Well, and MI's not gonna get those IMAX screens now too. It's not. Oppenheimer's
out his I'm Tom Cruise card. I saved cinema.
Cruz is pissed because Oppenheimer is going to take all those screens a week later.
Anyway,
but it's sad though with these Pixar with these layoffs and stuff. I wanted you to touch on the article that you found that really talks about the stock price for Disney too.
Yeah, so like the article I sent to them, I was kind of just scrolling through, and the article title just says, and this is why I wish we had Dom here because he knows way more than I do, so I'm gonna do my best. But it said Pixar targets Lightyear execs and among like 75 job cuts, and I'm just like, oh damn. It opens up by saying like Pixar Animation Studio has eliminated 75 positions, including those of 2 executives behind the box office disappointment. Lightyear. Sources said on Saturday the first significant job cuts the studio has had in a decade. The people that were cut was Agnes McLean, who was a 26-year-old animator who was part of the senior creative team for Toy Story 4 and Coco, and Galen Sussman, who is the producer of Lightyear, and he has been at Pixar since the release of Toy Story. And as Steve brought up as well, oh my god, geez, I'm just like fumbling here. She also was the one that saved Toy Story 2. So yeah, the cuts took place on May 23rd, and this kind of stems from what Bob Iger was talking about how we're gonna eliminate 7,000 jobs and slash 5.5 billion in costs. Now when he said that, like I did imagine, of course, a world where it's like, is this gonna include Pixar and stuff? And I was like, well, maybe, but we'll see. Maybe it's like theme park stuff because They just closed down that stupid Star Wars hotel where you can only stay in there for 3 days and stuff. So I was like, maybe he's cutting out stupid stuff like that. But no, I mean,
that was a miss.
It's going even further, man. So much so that Pixar is kind of taking a hit here, where the small the layoffs are small for just 75 people, okay, whatever. But that's 1,200 person studio. And you had 2 executives that have been there for a long time. That's actually a really big hit for a 1,200 person studio. You have to think most of those people are probably just animators and everything. These are not senior creative writers, animators, people that really kind of make some big shot callings, producers and stuff like that at Pixar. This is a huge hit for them. In terms of stocks, I'm not good with stocks. So when I was kind of just kind of taking everything else that's going on with with this article, I was kind of comparing it, because I sent the stock thing as well with this whole thing. Did you understand this more than I have?
Stock's not great.
Yeah, that's all I know. Great. It's not looking good. It's going down, and I know stocks aren't supposed to do that.
Yeah, that's the essence of it too. Mm-hmm. I really looked at because again my knowledge of stocks is rather limited, and that's why I'm not rich.
From what I can gather, when this layoff happened, it was the lowest point the stock has been this year, because it was actually rising up apparently in February, and then from February it started dipping, and then it went back up. But when it got to May, which is where these took place, it got to a low point that I guess was time for like investors to start saying some stuff where they were pulling out, and that's where, of course, the cuts come in, is because they're kind of taking a dip here. Since then, it actually went up 2 points. I don't know what that means for stocks, but if you do at home, then that is a good thing apparently, because it's going up now.
It really sucks though that, like, you know, like it's like after you get rid of people, then it's like the investors are like, yeah, it's a good time to buy now.
That's a good time to buy in. Like, you're obviously making decisions.
You know, Bob Iger's plan though is to cut like 7,000 jobs over the course of this year.
Yeah, dude. I'm curious to see where else it's gonna go, because
they've already hit every main thing: film, TV, streaming service, and the parks.
But I mean, like, where else are you gonna do this now? Is it gonna be even more studios you guys work with? Is it gonna be Disney animated studios? Is it gonna be Star Wars? Are you gonna cut some stuff out of niche, out of like the Disney Plus package, like, how we get like National Geographic stuff? Are they just gonna be like, you know what, we can't pay for that licensing stuff anymore? Like, we're gonna have to cut that out too. I'm curious to see how it does. And don't forget, we also have the combination of Hulu and Disney Plus. So who knows what jobs will be cut in terms of that combination once those two merge.
It's true, yeah. I didn't even think about that, too, because when you get Disney and Hulu, there's going to be more cuts, too. Yeah, which I feel, I don't know when that's coming. I don't know. They haven't really set a time yet, and I still feel like that really hasn't been reported much. Yeah. I know it's happening, and it's happening sometime this year. I don't know if it's happening anytime like probably in the winter maybe towards, because I feel like they haven't mentioned it.
They're kind of getting everybody ready for it, because more than ever have I seen the idea that you can watch Hulu and Disney Plus in a bundle. It was like, I used to see that bundle from time to time in advertising, but more than ever this year, they've been hitting it home. Like, hey, by the way, you can get Hulu and Disney Plus together. Hey, by the way, do you know a lot of Disney Plus and Hulu is streamed on the same platform? It's just like, oh, okay.
No, yeah, the marketing, now the two are inextricably linked now.
Yeah, because they're just getting ready for that transition period.
It is sad. I definitely wanted to highlight it, though. Just, and I'm convinced that, like, Angus McLean or something, I'm convinced he'll still go on to do some things in animation. Yeah. Hopefully DreamWorks or somebody snatches him up, or something like that. Because, I mean, as much as I did not like Lightyear at all, and I think Lightyear is pretty comfortably the worst Pixar movie. I could see that, yeah. I didn't want, you don't want anybody to lose their job over it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it sucks because, like, you're starting to see sort of the fallible nature of Disney. I'm not saying Disney's going to close its doors in the next 10 years, but you're starting to see the fallible nature of Disney in a lot of different ways now too, especially now that Iger's back, especially now that he's back. Like, and who knows? You wonder too, when it comes to Disney and Hulu, when it comes time to merge, are you going to see the same kind of really ugly shittiness that's happening with Warner Brothers Discovery and Max?
Dude, yeah. Is there going to be like stuff just cut out? Well, yeah, actually there is. What am I saying? There's stuff that, it's on Disney Plus, and it's just going to be gone to the sands of time, like Earth to Ned, which is a great show.
I do wonder, though, when it comes to all these cuts that they're making, like chopping stuff off of streaming services and stuff, I can't imagine these companies, like an American Pickle, like we keep going back to that one that got cut off of HBO, that got removed off of HBO Max, Charm City Kings as well. Those are available to rent on Vudu. So at least they're available. Yeah. At least they're available. I can't see studios, though, just taking a flat L on whatever it is and not having those accessible, at least on Vudu and YouTube, to rent. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just see them being a total write-off completely. It's just wild to me, though, that, like, I wrote reviews for those movies. Mm-hmm. We reviewed those movies, and the reviews are going to stay on the internet longer than the movies themselves.
Yeah. Is Artemis Fowl, is...
That's gone off of Disney Plus. Let me see here.
But is that available to rent, though?
It isn't.
So that's just... Dude, that's a legendary review. Bro, I have to, find that movie in my mind and save it.
Yeah, here's the thing. You're going to have the pirate sites.
Yeah.
You're going to have the pirate sites. But, yeah, it was the 18th most watched straight-to-streaming title of 2020, which is incredible because it came out in the middle of 2020. Yeah, that's gone. That's gone.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah. It's not available to rent anywhere. Nope.
I mean, in terms of the Artemis Fowl fans, they're probably fucking happy.
I'd say good riddance, but I never like Lost Media. Lost Media keeps me up at night. It keeps me up at night. And it's not fair to the creators of it either. But we'll end here. We'll wrap things up over here with Sleepless with Steve. I'm terrible. What is the movie next week? I'm terrible.
The Hot Cheetos movie. Oh my God, Flamin' Hot.
Flamin' Hot. Of
Flamin'
course,
Hot.
Flamin' Hot. Yes, that's right. Because I'm like, I'm not going to the theater. What is this weekend? That's right. It's Flamin' Hot.
Yeah.
Speaking of a Hulu movie, Hulu will get some time to shine on the show next week. Yeah. It is the Eva Longoria directed Flamin' Hot too.
Yeah.
Eva Longoria directed this thing, which now it's kind of funny that this whole story's coming out now because now there's all these reports that the story's bullshit. That the story's like total bullshit and the guy made it up. And it's like, oh great. Now we got a multi-million-dollar movie about it now too, about this bullshit story.
So now what we have to do is make a multi-million-dollar movie about him bullshitting the story.
That's exactly right. You already got your sequel over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You already got your follow-up.
Flamin' Hot Liar is what they need to call the sequel now.
Yeah, Flamin' Hot Liar. There you go. Big fat liar. Oh my! Well, here they did bigger, fatter liar. This will be biggest, fattest liar. Get another superlative in there. That we'll end here though. That's been our show, Sleepless with Steve. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening for a great show. Next week, hopefully, have our compadre back, Dominic Guanzon, to chat about Flamin' Hot. Man, he's gonna be pissed. He didn't get to talk about Across the Spider-Verse, but he's gonna talk about Flamin' Hot. So he's gonna be.
Hey, I have to miss the Flash in Indy, and I come back for what, like another streaming service movie? I forgot what it is.
Something like that. Yeah, mid-July. Yeah, whatever you come back for is not nearly as meaty as those. But we'll end here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. Highlights will be posted on this YouTube channel. And we'll see you next week on Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube.